You've heard now, of course, what the ministers have said. The government is on board for this transition. The ambassadors said a transformation is underway. We have the frameworks in place. We now would like to have our next panel discussion about the business view of this transformation. Where are we today and where are we going? Where will we be in 25 years? India, Sweden at 100. To help us with this discussion, I'd like to invite on stage Mr. Sunjay Kapur, Chairman, Confederation of Indian Industry, Europe Committee, and Chairman, Sona, Comstar. NICLAS CARLSSON, Director of International Market Development, Swedish Energy Agency. NAMI ZARRINGHALAM, Chairman, Co-founder, CSO, Truecaller. And we have with us online KAMAL BALI, President and MD Volvo Group India and Chairman Swedish Chamber of Commerce India, and ASHISH KHUSHU, CTO, LTS Technology Services. Welcome, gentlemen. I will actually stand here because I feel this is a little bit more comfortable. So you've heard the comments in the opening remarks today from the government, talking about where they stand when it comes to innovation, the opportunities available, and of course where we'd like to go in the future. India at 100 is where we're looking to be. I want to start with you, Sunjay Kapur, and you're here, of course, leading the delegation from CII. In reflecting on our 75 years of diplomatic relations between India and Sweden, what do you perceive as the cross-border potential for these two countries? And of course, you work with the automotive sector. What do you see as the key challenges and leverages you'd like to make between these two sectors in the coming years?
Thanks. Yeah. So I think, first of all, welcome, to this innovation, India-Sweden Innovation Summit. I think this is music to my ears because I come from the automotive industry, and innovation comes with so much disruption. The automotive industry comes with so much disruption that innovation is key for our survival. This morning, Robin said it right. And the ambassador pointed out, we've landed on the moon. We've had a mission to the sun. We've had millions of, or lots of sports wins, and we've had a great G20 presidency and a successful G20. And I think, innovation is something that we are living with today on a daily basis in every industry that that you're in. With the disruption that's happening across the board and the size and the growth of India, I think the opportunity to collaborate is phenomenal. The opportunity to collaborate across the supply chain in every industry is phenomenal. If you look at and I go back to the automotive industry, if you look at the beginning of the automotive industry in India, it started with a lot of collaborations. It started with joint venture partnerships with the intention to absorb technology. Some of that has happened and some has not. However, the technology has come into India. It has come at the tier 1 level of every industry. I think where the technology needs to seep into India is across the supply chain, down to tier 2, down to tier 3. And I think the opportunity is huge. When we go out and talk to different countries about technology, 5 years ago, India would be last on their list. Today, India is first on their list. And in a recent McKinsey interview, it was very well pointed out that we have 4 Ds that are going for us: the demographics, the deglobalization, and that's the China Plus One strategy. And we've seen great growth in the China Plus One strategy when it comes to the automotive industry. In fact, we grew 33% last year in the auto component industry alone. And then you've got decarbonization, which is, everyone's talking about it. We've got a 2070 goal of going carbon net zero. However, companies have, other goals of 2030, 2040. So there's a great opportunity there. And finally, digitalization. We have the India Stack. We have one of the fastest digitalization programs in the world. And that's, again, something that, is there to leverage. So I think India's, a great opportunity in terms of market size, in terms of industry. And I think a collaborative approach for Sweden and India in the area of innovation, in the area of technology, in the area of technology adoption is something that is here and the time is now. And I'm glad we have this opportunity to, meet at this summit and exchange ideas, exchange, opportunities to collaborate with each other.
Thank you so much. And of course, innovation is this catch-all phrase today. As you say, it cross-cuts all our sectors. You make a really interesting point of it having to seep down to tier 2, tier 3 across the supply chain, because right now maybe what we're seeing are the headlines of this transition taking place. But for it to be sustainable and robust, it has to actually deepen and enrich. And I'd like to come on that question to Ashish with us online. Innovation, of course, is not new to you. You've been working now with LTTS on this for quite some time. When we talk about green transition and digital services, what does this mean to you in terms of how we've worked and how we need to work moving forward?
Thank you, Arati, and thank you to the organizers for having me on this meeting and this panel. Thank you very much. It's a privilege. Just before I answer that question, and the earlier speakers alluded to it as well, and so did Honorable Minister Andreas Carlsson. The advantage of India is not only speed, scale, and talent, as the Honorable Minister said, it's also aspirational demographic. There is a demography advantage, of course, but the key part is that this demographic dividend that we have is one of aspiration. And that's relevant in a sense to your question, because when you have a very aspirational demography, you are looking at means through which you can make a difference, accelerate growth, and take those initiatives and make those investments that is necessary for the same. Now that reflects in many ways in the type of culture that was mentioned right now, in the sense that a large number of Indian companies, an overwhelmingly large number of Indian companies, has started investing in programmatic approach to innovation. So you see, in the end, a larger number of patents being filed in the country, a larger number of people really writing papers, a larger number of people participating in forums which set standards for technologies at different levels. Now that's really at the core of what's happening. Now that again drives behavior, and what we see now from our perspective in the industry is that, I'll give you an example, that when we were looking at setting up a greenfield plant for a FMCG major in India, the goal was not capacities. The goal was that this plant has to meet the SDG goals. So what would you do? How would you design a plant which would meet the SDG goals? And for that, if you have to use new technologies, for that, if you have to invest or have to leverage partners, do whatever it takes, but get me a plant which will meet the SDG goals. Now, the moment you have that type of an approach coming in, not only do you explore partners, not only do you explore innovative ways, not only are you looking at meeting SDG goals, but you're really putting your best foot forward in the way you're going to be innovative, in the way you're going to approach the whole problem. And that is the type of conversations and discussions that we are seeing in many ways. And that's where the intersection of digital starts happening with SDG goals, with the type of transformation that we are talking of. Now, that's a pattern that's no longer relegated to a industry or a geography or a customer type. This is the type of conversations we are seeing across the table increasingly by the day. And these cannot be just brushed off as an approach which one can fundamentals on innovation, employee participation, encouraging employees to think out of the way, is not in place. And that in a great sense gets driven by the fact that you have a demography and you have organizations which are very aspirational, which then drive the behavior towards innovation. And that starts intersecting with sustainable goals that organizations have. A huge way to go, a lot of things to learn from Sweden, a lot of things to learn from Swedish companies who excel in certain market segments. So it's a net positive for the relationship that we have with you people.
Thank you so much, Ashish. We are so happy to take from what you say in terms of this global growth of the middle class, not just India, but across the world. And of course, the consumer base, to have with us on stage a young company, a new unicorn who actually has been born digital and is taking us forward in terms of the India-Sweden relationship as well. Truecaller is no stranger to AI communications, and what you've been working with in Sweden has bloomed in India. It'd be great to hear from you, NAMI, about what your thoughts are.
Thank you. To start with, thank you for having me here. We have at Truecaller been working on AI technology for many years now, and the prime objective has been to basically stop fraud and spam. But since many, many years, we have had a ton of companies reaching out to us, businesses reaching out to us saying, can you help us stop fraud in our systems as well? And by using AI, we've always been able to help consumers to prevent them from, or prevent spams and scams from happening, but especially fraud, where you have senior citizens being defrauded on a lot of money, on their pension savings, on things that really matter to them. And we've tried to help them, supporting them, letting them know with our community of millions of users to prevent those things from happening. Now what we've done recently is, just last week, we launched a new business service called Risk and Fraud Intelligence. And it's built on AI technology, and it's specifically tailored to businesses. Why did we go this route? Well, it actually goes back a number of years when India started to do this digital transformation, and the government really pushed hard for financial inclusion. And the introduction of UPI and a lot of other digital services that helps transition the population into a digital world. We saw these things in Sweden many years ago. As soon as you moved from writing checks at the bank to being able to send money to someone digitally and immediately, what happens is fraudsters want to be there. They want to be where the money is. And so they will do anything, and they will actually innovate. They will use new technology for those benefits to try to scam people and lure people out of their savings. So we saw this happening in Sweden, and immediately when you rolled out, when this digital transformation started to roll out and really take place in India, we could see the same transition happening. Now, luckily for us, we were positioned in such a way that we could harness our community of over 300 million users to kind of prevent these things from happening on the consumer side. And what we've realized along the way is that this transition happening is actually also happening on the business side, because even businesses have this problem of wanting to drive with the mission of India of financial inclusion and these things. They want to enable these kind of services, the financial services, which creates prosperity and inclusion into the country. And their means to do so are limited, because there's a lot of people, millions of people that are unbanked, that have no registry of credit, that have, where the government identification even was limited. Each of these steps have been addressed by the Indian government, but at the same time, what we've seen is that because of that financial inclusion mission, and the lack of extensive information about a person over a longer period of time, these tools cannot necessarily be utilized fully. So we realize that our mission is not only to stop fraudsters, but also to enable this financial inclusion for the people who are on the record within the Truecaller ecosystem, but are not necessarily in the financial sector. They're not included in all of these, financial services that are available. So how can we enable that? And that's what we've done recently by building this AI technology that basically monitors risk and fraud, and then enables people who have been really good citizens but have been outside of that financial sector or that financial inclusion, to enable them that there is a signal that tells us that this person is actually not a fraudster. They're not going to bail on that credit line that you want to make available for them. They're not going to disappear tomorrow. They've been around for many years in our system. And those signals are really valuable, and those things are the ones that we've built specifically for India. Now, coming back to Sweden, I mean, right, Sweden, Truecaller is a Swedish and Indian company, I would say. However, the transition for Sweden, I would say, is not complete either. When you look at India, the amount of issues or these kind of signals that you need to look at in data and otherwise to create this financial inclusion forces us to think outside of what you would otherwise do as a kind of in Sweden or many other Western nations, where a lot of this infrastructure is already available. What I believe is in 10 years, these tools will actually be exported from India to Western nations, because they will just be so much better. To Sweden as well. They will be just so much better, triangulating a lot of the different issues that can arise when it comes to fraud and also inclusion, and triangulating them, doing that for the vast population of India, and then exporting those models to countries like Sweden or other Western nations will be happening in the next 10 years. And that's where we're focusing.
Thank you so much. I mean, of course, I'd like to just say 15 years ago, 12 years ago, I was sitting in Delhi, and Truecaller was something that I had by my bedside all the time, because what you're talking about and what was important for us living in Delhi at that time is institutionalizing trust. And in a country like India, maybe also Sweden, there are certain KYC documents, know your customer documents, that still need to be ironed out a little bit. And how you get to know someone is building that ecosystem and networking, which Truecaller has done really well. And of course, there's a market for trust, because your growth numbers have showed us that. And then I want to come to NICLAS on digital transformation AI and striking the balance, because of course, there is a conversation that is maybe new and very young. ChatGPT is about 1 year old now, and of course has shown us a different way of engaging, every single one of us, working with it on a daily basis. And there is a balance when it comes to green transition, AI, digital transformation, and data. How do you as the Energy Agency look at this as you move forward, especially when you're looking at joint calls in these areas?
Yes, thank you very much. So it's a very broad question, and I think it's a very important one. India is one of our key focus countries today. We have programs in 18 countries in total. Having said that, India is probably the country where the digital element is the biggest, but we also see a lot of potential in multiple sectors and also multiple areas of expertise. So having said that, it's important to find the solutions that can combat climate change very quickly and very efficiently, but it's also important to not forget the digital components, how to do this. We've seen in Sweden, for instance, how we can change both in terms of hardware but software. We were able to decrease the consumption of electricity within 1 month's time just by using electricity differently. So I think the key here is to find the synergies between digital transformation and real transformation and combining them in order to find the real solutions. And I would also like to comment what was said earlier, that there is a lot of potential, there is a lot of interest dealing with Sweden and India. I think we've had 5 or 6 incoming or outgoing delegations the last, I would say, 9 months between Sweden and India. And I think that's unparalleled for us at the Swedish Energy Agency, there is a strong interest. Having said that, we also have, of course, the India-Sweden Innovation Accelerator running for over 10 years, introducing over 200 companies to India. But maybe more interestingly, looking at the industry leap or Lead It, where India and Sweden are partnering up now, and there is a lot of potential in that field. So it will be interesting to see what we can actually do. But my point is, now there is a lot of interest from both sides. Now we need to find these projects that can accelerate the transition even faster and pinpoint the collaboration between Sweden and India, because we are at a competition with other countries and other collaborations. So we need to really show that we want this and show commitment. And I think looking at the digital element in India, I don't really see the same potential in any of the other countries we are working with.
That's good news for everyone sitting in the audience here today, because then the Energy Agency will be one of the key players as we go forward. But you made a good point. The digital transition has to also accompany the physical transition. They have to be balanced and work together. And of course, one of the key players doing this on the ground in India, Swedish company, growing and also manufacturing for the world, is Volvo Group. And Kamal was with us today. Maybe Kamal is not with us today. I will actually then move over back to NAMI.
I'm here.
Kamal, good to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning.
Kamal, I want to ask you, you've heard what the speakers have said before in terms of the way in which digital transition is growing. It requires both a physical hardware and also AI and communications to move forward. Volvo, of course, is focusing on achieving net zero in your supply chain by 2040. India is one of your hubs. How do you see this happening working from an Indian perspective?
Yeah, thank you, Arti. Good morning. Greetings to everyone from Bangalore, excellencies, colleagues, friends who are present in person in Stockholm as well as online. Pleasure to be speaking on this very distinguished panel. Arti, as you know, we are celebrating 25 years of Volvo Group in India, and we have been working very closely on the automotive and transportation solutions, both at industry level, at ecosystem level, and at the government level. And going forward, we believe India will be a significant contributor and the key architect in Volvo Group's net zero journey. And I say this because of the following reasons. Number one, the development of Volvo Group in India over the last several years mirrors that of Volvo Group globally. For instance, we have manufacturing plants for trucks, buses, engines, construction equipment, and we also cater to exports to several markets. In fact, the 5-liter and the 8-liter engine is produced exclusively in India for the entire world now. So I think that's something very important. The second within this is that we source components from India for the world. This is set to grow 10x of what is today over the next 5 to 6 years, 10x in the next 5 years. We design and have engineering centers in India for the world. In fact, India is now Volvo Group's largest R&D and digital and IT center outside Gothenburg. So obviously, there are engineers who are working on future technologies, on emerging technologies, whether it is e-mobility, hydrogen, and digital transformation. So we will have, India will play a stellar role in meeting the strategic objective of the group to get to net zero very, very quickly. And of course, the second point, of course, is that there is a natural emerging advantage India, which many speakers have talked about. I don't want to labor hard on that, with the growing talent from India. And I think that's something very, very big. And Volvo Group in India has nurtured a highly competent talent of engineers over the last 10 to 15 years. And we are about 5,000 strong people in that respect. The third element here is that India is a fast-growing domestic market. I think Sanjay Kapoor also alluded to that when it talked about automotive industry. We are amongst top 5 in any segment of the automotive industry, and this is going to grow further. And India is doing very well when it comes to its climate change performance and its ambition to meet the 2030 targets, whether it is on renewable energy, whether it is on transport economics, logistics efficiency. And we believe that the transport demand in India will grow by 4x by 2050. Niti Aayog estimates that 9 out of 10 trucks by 2050 will be either electric or fuel cell or with alternate fuels. And this is actually being supported big time by the PLI, production linked incentive schemes across hydrogen, battery chemistry, semiconductors, and advanced automotive components. So to my mind, this is going to be very, very big. And finally, in India, we have already started taking steps in the arena of heavy vehicles. We are bringing in an LNG truck, which is under trials, pilot trials. We are discussing on methanol as a fuel for marine applications. We are working on a hydrogen value consortium where we are going to have a pilot where we will run between 2 cities on hydrogen as a fuel. We have already introduced a couple of electric construction equipment. And I think all this is to realize our net zero ambition by 2040. So India is going to play a very, very big role in the overall journey of Volvo Group, especially when we talk about net zero.
Thank you so much, Kamal. That's actually very inspirational to hear in terms of how India has become not just a subsidiary in Volvo Group, but actually growing in its own and working with making in India, but exporting it to the world. Nami, before I go in a lightning round to ask the panel for their views and the way forward, I would like to get from you, given you've had the experience of Sweden and India, is there a difference in the way Sweden innovates and goes to market compared to what we're seeing in terms of your experience and Kamal's experience with India?
I would say absolutely. And this comes from me being an entrepreneur and seeing other entrepreneurs, speaking to other entrepreneurs, both here in Sweden and in India. And the way I've perceived it with entrepreneurs, at least in the digital sector, in Sweden, is that you start always, and this is what many of our mentors when we started the company used to say as well. You start out in Sweden, then you go in the Nordics, maybe you go to Denmark, maybe you go to Finland. Next step, maybe Germany or UK, you know, one of the two. And then in the end, you go to the US, and that's how you expand. This is like the footprint that I think is institutionalized in Sweden when it comes to both investors and to education and many other walks of life. And I think this is really something that needs to be changed. What we believe is that once you, at least in the digital sector, again, I do not have experience from other sectors, but in the digital sector, when you build something, you need to let it go to the world, and then you see where your product market fit happens. And this is the issue that I've seen many entrepreneurs in Sweden and in Europe generally take, that they immediately try to go these specific footsteps because that's the largest economies of today. But then if that would have been our step, we would not have been at the forefront of one of the fastest growing economies globally and one of the most ambitious and most probable leaders of the world in 10 years, in 20 years, we wouldn't be there. We wouldn't be partnering with India if those were the footsteps that we took. I also see the same thing in India, by the way. We spoke to, like anecdotally, a company in India a couple of years ago that they'd NLP, which is basically natural language processing, to process text and understand the content of it and these kind of things. And they were building it for India and stopped at having built it for 8 or 9 Indian kind of text languages. And that's where they stopped, and they're like, okay, yeah, so we're going to build this for India. And we're like, yes, but how do you know that people in Nigeria don't need this. Nigeria is also growing really fast. How do you know that people in Indonesia don't need this? And you can see this if you look at all these unicorns, many of the unicorns that grew in India the past couple of years, you can see that their first and foremost focus has been India. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I do think that once you have a digital product, distribution is free, and you need to take advantage of that, and you don't know where that takes you. So just you know, appreciate the fact that distribution of digital products is free, and try to make yourself available for everyone, because you do not know where the future is going to lead you.
Thank you so much. And we have time for one more question, and I'm going to come to NICLAS for that, because of course we've talked a lot about different sectors now. And one sector has been alluded to again and again, and that's the hard-to-abate sector. Pulp and paper, cement and steel. That, in terms of hardware, when it comes to the balance that we talked about as well, seems to be a very important next step. What is the Energy Agency looking to do with this hard-to-abate sector?
I think that makes a lot of sense to focus on just those industries. I mean, if you look at the total emissions in the world, those sectors certainly account for, if not the majority, almost the majority. I think Sweden has, I mean, we account for 1 per mil of the world's emissions today. But in terms of solutions, we aspire to present far more solutions when it comes to climate change. What Sweden has focused on, and what we have supported through the Swedish Energy Agency, has historically been industry transition, where we have certain programs like Industriklivet, the Industry Leap, also sort of going hand in hand with what we're seeing from Lead It, for instance. So I think we had a very interesting delegation in February this year, focusing on just those industries, and I think the interest was quite good. We saw some of the leading companies from India coming to Sweden to see what we're doing, not because we are helping them, but we are working together in order to find the solutions. And I think it's so important to mention, somebody mentioned talent. India has a talent pool that is, I think, unparalleled to Sweden. We need to collaborate, we need to exchange ideas, people, knowledge, in order to both find better solutions for Sweden and India. So we will continue to focus on the industry transition from our point of view and from Sweden's point of view. That's where we see the real sort of potential. So we are looking into building new programs for India where we can focus on the transition, how we can implement, let's say, green hydrogen into the industry process, but also looking into how we can make the industry processes more efficient, both in terms of smart meterings, AI, and so on and so forth. So I think there's a lot of potential there, and I can only see that our team and our activities in India are increasing. So that's a good sign, I think, looking at why we're here today.
Thank you so much. And of course, sitting next to you with Mrs. SUNJAY KAPUR is a delegation that is visiting from India to Sweden, and you lead that delegation looking for solutions, collaboration, research. In one sentence, can you tell me what you expect with your trip here this week?
So I think, thanks for that question. We're very keen to sign free trade agreements across Europe. We're working on free trade agreements with the EFTA, the ETFA, and the UK Free Trade Agreement. We're also it's very encouraging to see the government push towards technology and innovation and creating a manufacturing base in India. For us to grow at the rate we're growing, we have to increase our manufacturing footprint in India. And to create a manufacturing base in India for the world is where we're headed. And we talked about the PLI schemes. If you look at the production-linked incentive schemes in 14 different industries, it's all geared towards investment in future technologies. So the government has a great push in terms of investment in technology. And we're able to create a footprint for the world. And, a speaker before me also spoke about the fact that Swedish innovation made in India. I think that's phenomenal. That's a phenomenal idea of Swedish innovation made in India. And then whilst we talk about academia and business connect, I think the government, academia and business connect, the three-way partnership is something that will really help us. And I hope that, through the CII Europe Committee, we can achieve more success in these areas.
Thank you so much. And before I conclude, just to reconfirm what everyone has said, so we don't forget as we move through the day after the leadership conference. India for the world. Kamal has made that clear as well in terms of what Volvo is doing and what the potential is in your delegation that's with us this week. Industrial transition, led by government, setting the framework for where we need to be in the next 25 years. And most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, throw out the rule book. Thank you so much for joining us. If we can give them a warm round of applause.